Welcome back to The Cable Climb. I'm your host, Brady Volpe, and in this series we explore how broadband professionals advance their careers, sharing real stories and lessons learned along the way. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Mike Odell, a distinguished engineer at Comcast. From his early days in the field to becoming a recognized expert in the industry, Mike's journey is a testament to hard work and resilience and a genuine passion for cable technology. We'll talk about the steps he took, the obstacles he faced, and the mindset that propelled him to the top of his game. If you're looking for practical insights on how to climb the cable career ladder, you won't want to miss this episode. Let's dive in. Please join me in welcoming Mike Odell to the Cable Climb. Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Brady. It's good to be back.
It's good to see you. We've had you on the show before. And, Mike, I met you quite some time ago working, I believe it was at Cable Labs on standards and best practices and things like that. And, for me, you're an incredibly knowledgeable person in the industry. And I look up to you, I respect you. And it's exciting to have someone like you on because I know that you come from very humble beginnings starting in the field, but you've grown really well into Comcast and you've done a lot in the industry. We've had you on the show talking about PMA and PNM. You've presented at Cable Tech Expo many times. I even was able to moderate you this past fall on the presentation. So I think this is a great story to tell about how you got started in the career. And I'd like to kick off with that question. How did you get started in the cable industry? What was your first job?
I started as an installer at TCI Cable back in 1995. So this is actually my 30th year in the business.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And the truth is, I had no intention of ever working in this field.
That's a pretty common thing to say. This was not my plan either, this field.
Yeah. We've talked before, my background is actually in agriculture. I was a farmer, and I literally tripped into this business while I was rabbit hunting. It's a true story. I was invited to go on a rabbit hunt with a buddy of mine, and he had gotten out of the military. He did communications in the Marine Corps, and he was working in cable construction for a construction contractor. And he and I were hunting buddies, and he invited me on this hunt. And there was another guy there who was actually the supervisor of installation at TCI Cable. So I just met this guy walking through the fields, and we got to talking, and he said, "Hey, we're hiring. Do you know anybody that needs a job?" I said, "Well, what's the job?" I was like, "I could be interested." And he said, "Doing installs in cable television." So that's how that happened.
So first day on the job, what were your thoughts? What was it like?
I had no idea because I still had never had cable television at my house. So I really had no idea what I was getting into. I just know that at the time they were paying $7.50 an hour, which is a lot more than I was making farming. And I was not afraid of heights. So I had those two things going for me. The rest I would figure out.
Did they inundate you with training material? And, did you feel like, oh, I know everything there is to know about cable in the first day, first week, first month? How did that start out for you?
No, their training program was they handed me the SCTE installer course, which I had 6 months to complete. And they put me in a truck with an installer that had been around for years, Charlie Miller. Never forget him. And basically handed me a belt full of tools and say, "You're going to ride with this guy, and you've got 6 months to read this and pass this test. Good luck."
Common story in our industry, right? You got to learn. So how did you personally go about learning and teaching yourself with just a book, a meter, and a guy that you have to learn from?
I ask a lot of questions. So I do love to read. I will say that. I have a naturally inquisitive disposition. So I read the NCTI cover to cover a couple of different times, and then asked questions about the stuff that I didn't understand. And my dad taught me, or told me a long time ago when I was young, is to surround myself with people that are smarter than you. Um, and if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room. So I still wholeheartedly believe in those things. And that's one of the great things about some of the work that we've done in the SCTE working groups is I love being involved in those with folks like you and John and James and Dr. Colsey and Larry Walcott and Jason Roop. Like I am definitely not the smartest guy in that room, which is why I love being in that room, is to just learn at the feet of these, really brilliant people. But in the very beginning, it was just asking the tenured technicians and the supervisors. And we had a network engineer is named Tom Zoccolo, and I still talk to Tom today through text and other things. Tom was brilliant. He's now an engineer for a television station, but I had a lot of questions, and Tom fortunately had a lot of patience, and I think he recognized that I was willing to learn. So he gave me the hardest stuff on purpose and let me fail in sometimes dramatic ways, where he knew I was going to fail, but that I would come back with questions and say, why didn't this work? Because that was a teaching moment. And he would say, well, here's why it didn't work. And tomorrow try this. So I owe a lot to Tom Zoccolo for allowing me to fail.
So there had to be times in, you were frustrated or challenging days, but at some point you had to have said, this is the right industry for me. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to keep learning. Was there a moment for you that you realized you were going to do it, or did you just kept fighting through it?
That's a great question. And I don't know that there was like a moment. But there were a few pivotal moments, right? The first time that I was allowed to work on an amplifier and realize how many people were potentially impacted by my decisions, that was kind of a big moment. And then the next really big aha moment for me was when I won the Cable Tech Games in Pittsburgh.
Oh yes,
the Penn Ohio chapter. Like that was an aha moment, and that led to me getting to Expo for the first time in I think 2000 or 2001. That was when I decided that this was not just a job, that this could become a career. Was the first time that I went to Expo.
Can you elaborate a little bit on the Cable Tech Games for those who may not be familiar with them?
Yeah, there's some people that are passionate about the Cable Tech Games on this call, even. But yeah, the Cable Tech Games are a way for technicians to demonstrate their skills and abilities in different tangible facets of our industry. In the way that I characterize the events at the chapter level, they're executed by certain chapters across the SCTE nationally. And then the winners of the local games at the regional level, or the top finishers at the regional level, then are invited to participate in the Cable Games at Expo. And the Cable Games, I describe them as this. They fall into one of three categories. Well, actually four categories. There's general knowledge. Everybody's familiar with Jeopardy and Alex Trebek. There is a Jeopardy event called Cable Jeopardy that is constructed of general knowledge about the technology and the industry and all sorts of things. But then the other categories are construct, measure, or test. So you have to construct a portion of the network, whether it's a hardline cable or a drop cable, or fusion splice fiber together. And then you have to test them. There is a meter reading event. There's an MTDR event. Well, those would fall into the test category. So all of the events, and there are 7, either are general knowledge, construct a network, fiber network, or a coaxial network, measure a construction or coaxial network, or a fiber or coaxial network, and test. So at the chapter level, there are 7 events. And then at the national level, we combine them as of last year into 3 events. There's Jeopardy, the general knowledge portion. And then there's a coaxial event where you have to construct, measure, and test a coaxial network. And then the fiber event where you have to construct, measure, and test a fiber network. And that, we believe, is consistent with what our technicians in the field do today. Is they're either building it, they're fixing it, or they're testing and measuring it to determine whether it's working properly. Sometimes on the basis of P&M tools.
Yeah.
So that's the cable games, and it's been around since the late 80s, I think. I got involved as a network maintenance technician at AT&T Broadband for the first time, and participated in the local Penn, Ohio chapter event, and I had no idea what it was. They're typically executed at the same time as the chapter's vendor show or vendor days. So I was invited to say, hey, there's this vendor show thing in Pittsburgh, and they do some cable games or something. Do you want to go? And I was like, yeah, I don't know what that is, but sure. I mean, I'm a curious guy.
How you got started.
Let's go see what this is about. So I showed up in Pittsburgh and I signed up for the cable games, and I got my butt handed to me. And I went, well, this is kind of cool. I like to compete, and I'll figure this thing out. So I kept going back. But the other thing that was really meaningful to me that day was, all of the vendors are there with their latest amplifiers and tools, and test equipment,
new toys,
technology, new toys. Yeah. And tweakers and business cards. And so, while I was really excited about the cable games, which was kind of cool, and I got to meet techs from other places that were doing the same job as me every day, that I didn't know, we had a lot of shared experiences. So I built some relationships with other techs. We'll probably talk about that. But I got a bunch of business cards from vendors, and because I used some of their equipment in my day job. And so now
this helps you build those relationships that are valuable later on in your career.
That's right. And some of the relationships that I built that first time, I've maintained for 20 years. Yeah. Because, they became a resource for me to say, hey, why is this amplifier behaving this way? Like, why is it doing that? Now I knew who to call. And they were, always really forthcoming with their time, and willing to help out to make me a better technician. So that was the other big part. And then, after I figured the cable games thing out, and won, then I got to go to Expo, and that started, a whole new chapter.
Yeah, Expo really opens your eyes to everything that's going on into the industry. So when you're doing these cable games, you were talking a lot about skills and training and things like that. And you talk about certifications as too. What do you think are important skills, training, or even certifications that have helped you in your career?
So that's a great question. I think the most important skill is curiosity, and persistence, I think, would be a close second. Because, training has always been really important, and I'm a huge advocate for training. But to me, training just builds the frame around the puzzle. That's the way I think of learning any new thing, is it's a puzzle. And anybody that's ever constructed a jigsaw puzzle, where do you start? You start with the outside.
The outside, particularly the corners.
Particularly the corners. That's exactly right. And so that builds the frame. And then you start to put in the pieces in the middle that finish the picture.
Right.
And so to me, training builds the frame of the puzzle, but it's experience and curiosity and persistence that allow you to fill in the middle. And then once you have those two components, right, the framework and then the middle, then you have the whole picture. And to me, that's how I think about training. Without practical experience and failing and trying again and applying the scientific method to why didn't that work? Okay, let me try something different. training is only part of the equation.
So when it comes to building the proverbial puzzle, were there times that you had to step outside of the puzzle, the box, your comfort zone, in order to continue your career forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Most of the aha moments didn't happen while I was in a bucket truck. A lot of them happened while I was in the barn because I just kept chewing on this problem. Why didn't that work? What can I do tomorrow? Why did it behave that way? And then, I would go home and read and study and think and go clean stalls. And then I would have that moment of like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense now. And then go back to work the next day, like ready to try something different and test that hypothesis and see if that actually worked. And most of the time it does.
So how did you shift from being in the bucket truck to the role that you're in now, where you are working on standards, you are working on training and working in your organization as more of a leader than hands-on?
That's a great question. And I don't know that I have a good answer for it, if I'm honest. But I have been blessed to work for some leaders, I think, that gave me opportunities and wanted to reward my curiosity and my work ethic and my desire to be better at my craft. Because I no matter what I've done in my life, because I've worked obviously outside of the cable television industry, the work ethic that I learned on the farm growing up from my dad was always, hey, you give a man an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, and give it your best effort every day. And I've been fortunate to have worked for some leaders, Glenn Hatt at AT&T Broadband and Jim Mosier at Comcast, and Mike Kohler at Comcast, that have seen something in me, I guess, and given me opportunities to grow and, tap me on the shoulder once in a while and said, hey, there's this opportunity that you might want to think about. Because I never really went looking for it. My goal was always to just put my head down and be the best that I could be at whatever it is that I was doing at the time, whether it was an installer or a service tech or a network maintenance technician. Then, that opened up opportunities, I think, to get into leadership, which never really was on my roadmap, as a network maintenance supervisor. And, I poured myself into being as good as I could be at that thing, and developing my technicians and training and building relationships and growing. And I still talk to those techs that, fortunately or unfortunately for them, were my first system. I was just talking to those guys last week. Still love to work with them and help them solve problems and think about, problems in new ways and ways to take care of our customers, but also to grow them and make them think. And it just sort of built into this snowball. I don't know how I got here, Brady. I just, love being a cable guy and solving problems, and making customers happy is really the thing that I love about the job the most. Even when I was an installer, that was my favorite part of the job, because I knew when I showed up at your door that I had the ability to make you happy by either installing your services or by fixing a problem that were, not allowing you to enjoy your services. And,
you were able to bring happiness to
the
subscribers'
home.
home.
That's right, man. And that's no joke. That's the best thing. And as a network technician, having an impaired node and a bunch of customers that are having a poor experience, it's great. I loved fixing them and seeing customers come out and say, thank you, my cable's working great now.
I think it's awesome that you recognize that, and it's important that we all recognize that we have the ability, when we're walking into that subscriber's home, to make a difference, to either give them good service or bad service, and make them happy when we walk out if we do the right things. So Mike, you talked a lot about your passion, your continuous learning. Our industry continues to evolve, and it doesn't seem like it's going to stop. But In what ways have you seen the broadband industry evolve since you first, since you were out hunting in the fields and you had that discussion in your first day on the job? What changes have you seen?
I think it's really about the value that we offer in terms of a service. So what do I mean by that? I remember responding to the scene of the crash, early in my career when the car hits a pole, the power guys are there, the phone guys are there, the cable guy shows up, and they're like, we got this. We'll let you know when you can come in and fix your stuff because we're the utilities and you're just the cable guy.
You're just a cable guy.
Just the cable guy. And, customers cared about getting their power back on first, right? And then their phone. And I've literally had outages that lasted a week where customers just didn't call because they're like, figured you'd get to it eventually.
This was long ago.
Yeah, this was
a long time ago.
Yeah. Now, when we show up at the scene of the crash, the customers are standing on the curb saying, when will my Wi-Fi be back?
Right. It's probably on the same level as I want my power and I want my internet. Same time.
That's right. And now with the advent of mobile devices, they want connectivity, whether it be through, a wireless network, but their reliance is really on the wire line and Wi-Fi.
Well, for some people, you got to have your wireless or your wireline back up so you can get the phone number to call the utility company to get your power back on.
Yeah, I think it's that shift in just the perception of the importance of what we deliver to our customers. And Eddie Marchetti said it all the time. Wi-Fi is like oxygen.
Yes.
It is so critical to people in their everyday lives. And so that's what we get to give them. And that's what I appreciate about this industry is that it has evolved to carry a significant importance in people's lives, whether it's Comcast or any other provider. It's that important now.
For a new technician starting brand new on the job today, how are things different from when you began, or are they different?
Oh, they're very different in a lot of respects. First of all, congratulations, new technician. You are in a wonderful position in a wonderful industry. The world is your oyster if you choose. But it is a lot harder. When I started, it was 330 megabytes one-way video only. So the amount of variability in the products and services that I had to understand and maintain was very limited.
Yes. The
technology itself was much simpler. Today, and I say this all the time, our technicians could wake up in the morning, and let's imagine that this is a service technician and have legacy linear video services, sub-split, mid-split. They could have an RFOG deployment. They could do EPON. They could do DOCSIS 4 FTX. They could do mid-split. All in the same day.
Yeah, on the same network. Yes. It's
and on the same network. And that's exactly right. And understanding the nuances of what affects the products and services that the customers are asking for through that network is much, much more challenging. So I think that's the difference, is the technology is much more advanced and much more mature, which means that the amount of information that the technician needs to understand is also significantly greater. Now, we can also say that the technology and the tooling in P&M specifically is way better than it's ever been. So the amount of information that the technician has at their disposal to understand the problem, diagnose the problem, and localize and resolve the problem is better than it's ever been. So they have some advantages, but there's also disadvantages to being a new technician today.
A lot more to learn, and a lot more for all of us to continue to learn. So
yes.
With age comes wisdom, Mike. Looking back, what wisdom would you bestow upon your younger self when you were starting your career?
I think be patient. It's just never been a virtue that I possessed. So I probably wouldn't listen to me either. but I really, I don't have any regrets. Other than I would say be persistent. Because I'll be honest, you mentioned there have been probably 4 or 5 times in my career that I've gotten frustrated. Um, not not with the companies or the leadership necessarily, but with just my ability to keep up. I think I've considered leaving this industry 4 or 5 times. Thank God I didn't, because it's been such a great ride. But just be persistent and stick it out. Ask the right questions, find the right sponsors and mentors, and just put in the work is probably what I would tell myself.
Good advice. So any funny stories or memorable moments for your time in the industry that you'd be willing to share with us?
Oh man, there's been a lot, um, and I probably not fit for the air. Um, but the thing that I love about this business and the industry is just the camaraderie and the relationships, because I work with so many great people. And that's the thing that I love about my position now at Comcast is there are 4,500 network technicians across our country, um, and on top of that, more great leaders in our company that I've had the pleasure and the privilege to work with and to get to know, and just the relationships and some of the stuff that goes on, in the shops, in the bucket trucks, in the parking lots is just a lot of fun to be around.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun in the industry, some of which, as you say, we just can't talk about while we're
That's right.
recording.
That's right.
Right. Mike, before we wrap up, is there any final advice or insight that you'd like to share with our audience, particularly new technicians or technicians that are working in the field right now?
Yeah, for sure. Get plugged into your local chapter, and by that I mean get involved. Don't just join, but pay attention. Get to know. The thing that I say about SCTE that is as true today as it has ever been is that it is a giant resource, and it's not just the printed materials and the certification; it's the people. I have never reached out to an SCTE member expert for help and been told no, ever. And I ask a lot of questions. So it may be I can't get you that information right now, but I will get back to you. And they always do, always. So, but you have to show up. You have to get involved. You have to build those relationships with the people in your chapter, which will get you then the resources in the vendor community that support the chapters and the industry at large, and build that network of people, because that's the important part. The people are the resource. The people are the experts. You just have to know who they are and where they are. And when you need them, they'll be there, but you have to show up. So that's my advice, and has been since I learned that lesson 20 years ago. I showed up at the Penn, Ohio chapter, as a technician, and they helped me. And it wasn't just Comcast or AT&T broadband people. It was people in the vendor community. It was people at Armstrong. It was people in other companies. Because I have some mentors that don't even work for our company. But that was fostered through the Penn, Ohio chapter of the SCTE. So show up, get involved, get to work.
Such a great thing about our industry. It's we tend to all help each other and work together. Even competitors work with each other, which is an amazing thing. You don't see that frequently in other industries, and I hope that continues to go on.
I do too, and that's the crazy thing that I tell people all the time is even though we're in the same industry and are perceived as competitors, inside the bounds of the SCTE, we're not. We're peers, we're friends, and we all are trying to solve the same problems, which is how do we empower and educate and our technicians to go take care of our customers. Their customers are not my customers, but we have the same goals. And so there's, that spirit of collaboration that comes from that place of we have the same goals, in a lot of cases, the same technology. So why wouldn't we help each other?
Absolutely. Well, Mike, thank you so much. That was great information you bestowed upon us. This brings us to the end of this episode of The Cable Climb. Huge thanks to you, Mike, for sharing your experiences and insights and advice on how to rise through the ranks in broadband. I hope your story inspires everyone to keep pushing forward in your own career journey. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. If you have any questions for Mike or suggestions for future guests, drop them in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching. And remember, keep climbing. I'll see you on the next time on The Cable Climb. And thank you again, Mike.
My pleasure.